Well, it's very, very sad. I mean, he was a superb public servant. I mean, I worked with him for 5 years in the cabinet. He was brilliant at getting his head around very complicated problems in sort of brokering agreements between ministers who were implacably opposed. And I think what was remarkable is he worked for Lib Dem, Conservative, Labour ministers, and none of us had the faintest idea what his politics were. I mean, he was just the perfect civil servant and just very, very good at his job. And it's rather tragic he's died at such a young age.
Yeah, well, quite exactly. And I think perhaps the thing that nobody could tell his politics is one of the highest compliments you could pay a civil servant. I'm keen to talk to you about Brexit. This morning we've had a letter from 50 business leaders demanding a second referendum. How likely do you think it is that a second referendum will happen? 50%, more or less? I think probably a bit less than that, but it's certainly one of the options that is available, and it's the right option. I think we may well get into a position where Theresa May comes back with a deal. We've had a sketch this morning from a very reputable journalist giving us some indication about what might be involved. I think it's rather unlikely that that will command a majority in the House of Commons. There's certainly no majority for no deal, which would be a complete disaster. And going back to the country and saying, well, this is the best I can do. Do you want that, or do you want to stay in the European Union? I think that would be a fair and democratic way of dealing with it, and there is a growing support, I think, reflected in the march a few years ago, the statement of these business leaders and others. So I'm interested, if you think that the likelihood of a second referendum happening is under 50%, what happens to the Lib Dems if the UK does leave the EU next year? Are you going to campaign to rejoin? Well, we'll obviously have to take stock of where we then are. I mean, we would certainly want us to remain very close to the European Union because it's so much part of our life. Potentially to rejoin, even if it might mean, you know, well, entering Schengen? Rejoining under the current rules would be very, very difficult because the so-called Article 51 process, which creates significant hurdles. So, no, we'll obviously have to... If this happens, and we hope it won't, and we think there's a good chance it won't, but if this happens, we'll obviously need to sit down and think about the long-term future, which does link us to the European Union, whether rejoining or whatever is for us to think through. But we are a European country, and we are very closely linked through trade, through movement of people in many other ways, and it will be foolish to unscramble all of that, and very damaging to the country. And nobody has yet come up with any kind of deal which is remotely comparable to the deal we already have. You've said before that when Brexit is resolved, you'll step down as leader. So what timetable is that? I mean, are you talking about next year? Well, what I've said is that I'm trying to be professional about it and create an orderly succession. And I've said that there are certain jobs for me to do, and one of them is to see us through the Brexit process. We've got local government elections next year. There may be an early election. There are certain reforms I'm trying to put through the party, which will take some months. You know, when all of that's completed, then I'm ready to help the next generation move on. But I'm not setting a time on it. But it sounds from what you're saying it could be next year. Is that right? It's quite possible, but I'm not being definite about time because I'm working to specific tasks rather than setting an artificial deadline. Would you be tempted by a job at Facebook? No. I have worked in a big multinational company and I've enjoyed doing it, but it was a very good experience. But no, I'm not looking for a job. I enjoy writing books and I enjoy my politics. I love being a constituency MP, and these are things I'll be continuing to do. Were you surprised when Sir Nick Clegg announced that he was joining Facebook? Not completely. I mean, he's a young man by political standards. He's very capable, and he's getting experience in a global business, and why not? Now, this week, the Lib Dems announced that you were cutting staff at your London HQ. It's been a difficult period, hasn't it, for the Liberal Democrats? Disappointing election results. You haven't had the breakthrough in the polls that you may have hoped for with your opposition to Brexit. Why did you cut those staff members, and what does it say about the state of your party? Well, I'm very sorry for the people who will be affected by that, but it isn't a problem unique to us. I think all political parties are currently having a struggle with finance because, you know, we've been under a lot of financial pressure. We've had 2 general elections, 2 referendums, and, you know, like any other organisations, we've got to live within our means. So I do feel for the people who are now worried about their position.
but it's something we have to do. As far as the future of the Lib Dems is concerned, I'm optimistic. I mean, we haven't had a test of electoral opinion, but where there has been at local level, I mean, every Thursday, the local by-election, we're doing extremely well. We're outperforming Labour and Conservatives at that level. Our opinion polls ratings, as you say, are not great. I'd like them to be much higher, but they're several points up on the position I inherited. Our membership is very strong, and we have a key leadership role in all of this campaigning against Brexit. So I'm very happy with where we're heading.